8, Mishna Beis, Mishna 2. Okay. Ha'omer la'avdai. Somebody who tells his servant or his slave, we're talking about here a Gentile slave, who again has a status like a woman. Go and shecht for me a carbon Pesach. So basically, I'm authorizing him to go and buy an animal for me, to register me on that animal, and to shecht it for me as the carbon Pesach. So a person says to his slave, go and shecht for me, go and shecht for me a carbon Pesach. But he doesn't tell him which animal to use. We know for a carbon Pesach, you can use a goat, a kid, or you could use a tleh, you could use a lamb. So he told his servant, his eved, to go and get an animal for the carbon Pesach and shecht it for him and do it for him. They didn't specify, though, which animal to use, a kid or a lamb. So the Mishnah says, shachat kadi, if it comes out that the servant had slaughtered a kid, yoichal, you can eat it. Shachat tleh, if it comes out, if he decided to slaughter a lamb, yoichal, he can eat it. Basically, the Mishnah is saying that if the master did not specify which animal to use, we assume that he's relying on whatever choice the servant makes. That's what he's going to work with. And as the Baratinura points out, that even holds if every other year this person used, let's say, a lamb, and now the servant used a goat, still good. Just because of the fact that he always until now used a lamb doesn't mean that he is not again just relying on the decision of the servant, even if it comes out being a goat, which typically he doesn't use. Okay, so whatever he lands up, he shechts, you can use it. Shacha gedi utleh. Now, what if you shechted both? For some reason, the servant decided to shecht both, and he did both of them for the master. Yoicham and arishan. The first one you eat, because the first one already was the one. He shechted the first one, whichever one it was. So the master was really working with whatever the servant picks. The servant picked the first one, so it's done. It's done. He already picked one. He already did a carbon Pesach. He did one. The master's intention was the one that he picks, and why shouldn't it be the first one? The first one is the one that he did. He took that. He did it for the carbon Pesach. That's what the master relied on him to do. So that's done. So he's already fulfilled his obligation through the first one. The second one is just basically nothing because he shechted it for no one.
It's food.
Well, if you shecht it for no one, it's no good. It's invalid. What would you do with it exactly? I think you have to burn it. Okay, so that's that case. So in the first case, he told the servant, shecht me an animal for carbon Pesach. He didn't specify which one, which means he's assuming he's just relying on whatever the decision of the servant is. And in the case where the servant did both, the first one already worked. Once he shechted the first one for his master, that one already became the one for the master. And the first one you eat, the second one is invalid. Now, next case. Shachach ma'amar rabbi. The master told him specifically which one to use, and he forgot which one he told him. Forgot. Kate said yasa. So what should the servant do? Yishchat taleh ugadi v'yoymar. He should shecht both a lamb and a goat and say, Im gadi amali rabbi. If my master told me to do a goat, gadi shaloi utaleh shali. The goat's for him, and the lamb is for me. Vim toleh amar li rabbi. And if my master said it should be a lamb, hataleh shaloi, the lamb is his, ugadi shali, and the kid is mine. So basically, in this case, he's trying to, you can't make them both. It's got to be one or the other. The thing is, though, that, if it comes out that if the problem is that on each animal, if it's not the right, he said, if my master wanted let's say we just say if my master wanted a goat, okay, I'm checking the goat for him. And what if he didn't want a goat? So he has to shecht the lamb to cover that. But then what if the lamb, he didn't want the lamb, he wanted the goat? You can't do both. It's got to be one or the other. So therefore, and now, to go ahead and shecht both and say, well, it'll be either one, that also is not good. To shecht either one and just say, well, if he wanted this one, it should be his. Well, this one, it should be his. And the other one, what should happen to it? Go to waste?
You got to trick it.
What do you do? You're going to go to waste? So what he does here, instead of it going to waste, is that he has, what he does is he says that one, basically he's saying whichever one my master meant, that's for him. And the other one is for me. Now, there's a problem with that. The problem is not, number one, the problem is not that he's a slave, because a Gentile slave owned by a Jew is like a woman, like a Jewish woman. He's got to eat the Korban Pesach. He's got to mitzvah eat the Korban Pesach. The problem is, if we're talking about a slave, so he doesn't own anything of his own. Doesn't own anything of his own. It belongs to the master. So what is it? How could he say, well, if it's not for the master, the other one's for me? What do you mean for you? You can't do it. It's automatically belongs to your master. You can't say if it automatically goes to your master, you can't say it's for me, basically without his consent. So the Bar Tanura says the case is that this servant goes and finds a shepherd, meaning a person who sells animals, who is, a friend of his master and wants to make sure the master gets his mitzvah done. And what he does is he says that whichever one you want for yourself, that animal I am gifting to you on condition that your master does not acquire it. Even though the rule is, Mashkana Evakana Rabbi, that whatever a slave acquires goes to his master, if I give the slave something and I make a condition, I say, no, I don't want the master to acquire it, I only want you to acquire it, then that works. Then only he will acquire it and his master will not. So in this case, the person who's selling the animals says, whichever one is for you, I'm giving it to you as a gift, and your master can't have it. And therefore it works out that he can say, whichever one was if this was from a master, fine, and the other one's for me, and it works out. Now, get ready for this one, all right? The Bar Tanura points out, based on the Gemara, that this case that we're talking about right now is actually speaking about a very specific situation where we say, let me just make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Let's go back to let's go back to that last part of the previous Mishna that said, he told the servant, go shecht an animal for me. Okay, the servant went ahead. He went ahead and he shechted. If he shechted the Mishnah says if he shechted a kid, that's good. Shechted a lamb, that's good. What if he shechted both? Then we say that if the servant slaughtered both of them, we say the master eats from the first one that he slaughtered first, because we assume that the master does not care if his offering is a kid or a lamb. Okay. Thus, the first one slaughtered was valid, and the second one is invalid, since the master already fulfilled his obligation with the first one. Okay, that's what we said before. Basically, we're assuming he doesn't care which one it is, and therefore, the first one's going to work, not the second one. So let me read to you here from the bottom. This comes from the Gemara. The Gemara explains that the Mishnah refers to a case of a king and a queen who sent their servant to bring a Pesach on their behalf. Since fine foods are always available to them, they are not particular if the offering is a kid or a lamb, and they therefore accept whichever offering was slaughtered first. However, in the case of so that means like this. That means that they, because they have so much, all this stuff doesn't make a difference to them. Lamb, kid, it's no big deal to them. They have plenty of it all the time. It makes no difference to them. However, in the case of a regular person whose servant slaughtered both animals, both offerings are invalid, because such a person may specifically want a kid or a lamb. Since the master relied on the servant to choose for him, but the servant did not choose, rather he slaughtered one of each kind, it turns out that the master was not registered on either one. You follow that argument?
All right.
Basically, you shecht me one, again, so if I'm a regular person, so if I'm a regular person, it's one or the other. That's just, what my thought process is. It's not like I go ahead and I just have food galore. For some reason at this point where I'm not someone that has a lot of delicacies, I'm going to be specific. It's going to be one of them. I mean one. And I'm assuming that you're going to choose for me. In the case where he slaughtered both, what happened at the end? Really? The servant didn't choose. The servant didn't really choose. And he was relying on a choice of the servant. The servant should make a choice. If it's a king and a queen, they don't care what the choice is. But a regular person, he doesn't care if it's going to be a lamb or a kid, but he is assuming he's in his mind there's going to be a choice. And since there's going to be a choice, and the servant didn't make a choice, then no one chose. If no one chose, then it's not going to work for the master. If I'm going to be on that Karban Pesach, that means I have to consent to it. I consented because I'm leaving it up to your choice. But if he never made a choice, because he slaughtered both, that means he never made a choice. So no choice was made. No choice was made, then it comes out that that Karban Pesach can't be registered for me. So that's in that case before, where again, you told him without specifying, go and shecht, and he shechted both. Okay, sorry, I missed that before. All right, so now in this case again, the case was the master told him something, he forgot. So what does he do? He takes both the lamb and the kid, and he says, whichever one my master meant, that should be for him, the other one's for me. Okay, now, so we're up to, right, Shachach Rabbi Me'amarloi. Now the plot thickens. Not only does the servant forget what his master told him, you know who else forgot? The master forgot. Can't remember what he told him. So this is talking about after the servant went ahead and he shechted both. Shechted both for him. And he made this condition. But now he comes to the master and he says, look, this is what I did. And the master says, I don't remember myself which one I told you. So what happens? Shachach Rabbi Amarloi. If the master forgot what he told him, Shneim Yetzil Beis Hasreifa, both of them have to be burned, because whichever animal wasn't for you, you can't eat it. Upeturin Milas Pesach Sheni, but both the servant and the master will be exempt from bringing a Pesach Sheni, which means even though they didn't eat from the carbon, it still counts for them. You know why it counts for them? Because at the end of the day, you specified, right? He went ahead and he covered all bases. At the end that you can't eat it, all right, you got a problem. You can't eat it. Although we mentioned before that the main part of the Karban Pesach is to eat it, if the actual animal was slaughtered and the blood was sprinkled properly and everything is in order, you just don't remember what you don't remember what should be, which one was yours. But at the end of the day, it was all done properly. You've done the mitzvah. And therefore, although you can't eat it because you don't know which one is yours, and if it's not yours, you can't eat it. If you can't eat it, it's got to be burned. So it comes out you never ate the meat. But at the end of the day, you know, everything for the slaughtering, the sprinkling of the blood, everything was done properly. Everything was done properly, and therefore the Karban Pesach counts for you. You fulfilled your mitzvah. You don't got to do a Pesach Sheni. You're not going to do a second one. And at the end of the day, it all works because, look, the master told him which one. The Eved went and covered all bases to make sure that it's covered, and it's done, and it was done properly, and it was done properly. Now, at the end of the day, which one should I eat? I don't remember which one I told you. Okay, you can't eat it, but the mitzvah's done. And therefore, the Mishnah says they both have to be burned because no one can eat it, but you'll be exempt from doing a Pesach Sheni because your Karban Pesach was fulfilled. Have a wonderful day.
I say, put it in writing.